Our special guest today is Dr. Michael Gurian, our good friend. And Michael and I have been working together for years. We do a podcast called the Wonder of Parenting Podcast, a brain science approach to parenting. And last weekend, I was up in Michael's hometown of Spokane, and we had a chance to do a Helping Boys Thrive Summit together. And this weekend, he's returning the favor, and he's coming to Phoenix. And on Sunday afternoon, May 1st at 4 o'clock, we're going to be doing kind of a live version of our podcast. And we're going to talk about specifically how moms and dads parent differently and the tendencies that moms have in parenting that dads have, why they're both important. In some ways, I guess you could think of it as dads come from Mars, moms come from Venus or something like that. So it'll be fun. It'll be informational, very practical. And it's a free event for parents and grandparents. And we're inviting you to bring your kids because we'll have activities for them for the entire hour while you're there. And come a half hour early. Come at 3:30 to 4 o'clock. The ice cream truck will be there with free ice cream. And so we're gonna make a day of it. And I hope you'll be inviting your friends, both parents and grandparents. But today, what we want to talk about is our kids. And we want to talk about building resilience in our kids. And Michael, I know that for you, this has been a big topic, especially the last couple of years coming out of COVID, building resilience in our kids. Let's start by defining what you mean by resilience, first of all. Why is it important that our kids have resilience built into them?
Well, and let me say, before I answer that, I am really honored to be coming and to be with you all. So I do hope I get to see everybody. You have just an incredible community. And so thank you, Tim, and thanks, Grace, and everyone. And see you soon.
Yeah.
So resilience is, by definition, resilience has to do with coming back after disturbance, being strong through disturbance, right? Being strong through attack, being strong through challenge. So you're resilient because you're able to take challenge. You're able to take attack, and you're able to deflect it or work with it and meet challenge with strength, with purpose. That's resilience. And so, of course, every child needs to be challenged as a child, needs to go through challenges in order to develop that resilience. Every child has a natural sort of quantity and quality of resilience that comes along with their genome and their DNA. And I do in my books and talk about there are certain genes. Some kids are better set up for resilience. They have more of those genes. Other kids have less of those genes. And why is that important? Well, it's important because as we study our kids, we can see, we're smart and we can see the ones who are like, wow, really sensitive, doesn't have a lot of natural resilience. But this other one, anything happens, resilient. So, and in between. So that helps us actually to study what resilience is, because we can see it in our kids and in ourselves. And then when it's lacking, we can say, okay. And so especially for the ones who are lacking resilience, we're going to have to give them more safe challenge. We don't want to overprotect them. We don't want to intervene all the time, especially for them. Because if we raise kids who become adults, even teens who don't have resilience, they are more likely to get into trouble, criminality, substance, abuse or overuse, alcohol, everything. They're more likely to be sexually abused, even, depending on the age of that. Everything we can track back to resilience. Some, a predator is so powerful that the resilience, often doesn't matter, right? But there are other things that children will get hit with and that adults will get hit with, and them having resilience is going to keep them from going down that path. So resilience is a crucial part of maturity.
And why is it these last few years, it's become a far more important topic for you than maybe in the past? What's been happening where you said, we got to really talk about this? You just came out with, I think it was part 3 of 3 elongated blog posts on this whole topic. What's going on that we want to make a call for resilience?
I've been even back in the Wonder of Boys 25 years ago, I have sections in there on this about how we have to target maturity and resilience in boys' development and then Wonder of Girls and Girls Development. But in the last 5 to 10 years, it's like I'm looking at a culture that that does a couple things that I think are dangerous to the development of maturity. One is constant intervention. We are parents and schools and everyone is constantly intervening in little things, medium things, big things that kids are going through. So they're stopping kids from having tussles, right? Because maybe that's violence, so they stop them, or or the kid has a relationship with a teacher or with someone else, and they're working stuff through in that relationship, which is actually building resilience. But then the parents step in and stop that because, well, my child cried. Okay, you can't. My child can't cry, so now I have to do everything so my child doesn't cry, right? And so that's one thing that has worried me, as you've said, kind of maybe over the last 10 years. Starting around 10 years ago, I really noticed that intervention. And then the other thing is just doing everything for kids and not directing kids toward activities and jobs and purpose that in which they would build resilience. But if they're uncomfortable, saying, well, we don't want them to be uncomfortable. We want everything to be comfortable. And, so he ought to be playing sports, but he's saying he doesn't want to. He ought to be getting exercise, but he's saying he doesn't want to. So, let him play video games and not really do much. Well, he's not developing resilience from video games. He's going to develop resilience and maturity by doing these activities that he says maybe he doesn't want to do, or she says she doesn't want to do, but they really are better for him. They are better for her than social media, and that the more movement towards screens, and that links to what you were asking about COVID, the more movement towards screens, and especially the last 2 years on screens, the less resilience, right? Because screens are very passive. And even though we call it social media, it's imperfect socialization. It's not really the socialization that is sensorial, that's kinetic, where I'm with you and I'm socializing and building resilience. So I would say those two elements, and then the parental emphasis on devices and kids' emphasis on devices then adds another piece. And that has definitely become an issue the last 5 to 10 years.
Right. So let's talk strategically. Let's throw out 2-3 things that parents can do. And then we're going to tease this out more in our time together when you're here on Sunday afternoon. What are 2 or 3 different things that parents can do, strategies parents can use to begin to build resilience into their children?
Okay, so one is to look at devices. So because the way parents can tell that kids are not as resilient is that, more use of devices creates more anxiety and more depression. Okay. And we might look at that and say, well, that has nothing to do with resilience. That's a brain disorder, depression or anxiety. But in fact, that's being triggered, especially COVID, post-COVID. A lot of that is being triggered by overuse of devices. So we take the devices away, or we titrate them down to where the kids are not overusing them. We will gradually see some of that depression and anxiety dissipate. There is a direct link to resilience, right? That child is more resilient when we take away these devices. So look at devices. Number 2, look at intervention. Study. So in those essays that people can find on GurianInstitute.com, if you click the news page, you'll find these 4 essays. And the 4th one will be out before I see you all. So you can get all 4. And I have a whole thing in there about intervention and asking people to study their families for a month. So study your kids and your families for a month. Create a journal, study them. This is a really good strategy. See where your kids fit on sort of on the resilience spectrum, the different kids, and then see how much do I intervene? How much do others intervene when they're trying to work things out, when they're trying to meet a challenge? Do I meet the challenges for them? Right? Which is intervention. Like they can't do something in their homework. Do I do it for them? Of course, no parent does that, but you know what I mean? So I want to study it for 30 days and I want to have a meeting in my family. And then I want to set a plan I'm going to cut out 5 interventions a day.
Wow. Yeah.
5 times I intervened, I'm going to cut out. If I'm, let's say, intervening 15 times. If I'm intervening once, then we're probably okay. But if I'm intervening 15 or 20 times. So look at that. And then the third strategy I would suggest is to look at activities and make sure that the kids have primary activities set up in which they will build resilience. Sports are an example. If they refuse to do any sports, then they still should be exercising, running, whatever is their exercise.
Mm-hmm.
They should be, those young bodies should be exercising, 1 to 2 hours a day. So physical exercise. So those are activities. Martial arts are activities. And another activity is sleep. Study sleep. Because, and this often goes with devices, but if the child is not getting enough sleep, the child will not develop as much resilience. The child is compromised. So the activities should hopefully help the child to sleep, and then you take away the devices. We have we're looking at around 40%, at least 40% of our kids right now are not sleeping enough. That is actually a magic formula for more resilience if we make sure they sleep enough. So I would lay those on folks just to start.
Yeah, I shared some statistics with our congregation a couple of weeks ago on that 40% of our culture isn't getting enough sleep. And somebody, and this may be stretching things a bit, but they said we're at a position now where the average person in the United States will spend 44 years of their lives on screens. Now, that sounds really like a lot. But when you start thinking about, how much time people are spending on screens, do we want to look back and say, I spent 44 years of my life on a screen? Probably not.
Right.
Now, I know one of the things that you talk about when it comes to activities is you're really big on sacred work. Now, some parents call it chores, which is a negative word, but sacred work. Tease that out for us a little bit.
Yeah, sacred work builds resilience because they have to set a goal. Right. Even if it's taking the garbage out, these should be the essentials of family life, and kids should have from the very beginning responsibilities. And I give this example of picking up the spoon. I have this in The Purpose of Boys, and it's resilience and purpose, can fit together. The child is in a high chair and he drops his spoon, and it is our instinct as parents. It's easier for us not to have him get down out of the high chair and pick up his spoon. We just get down here and we pick up his spoon. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with that, but use it as a metaphor. The more that we do that for him, the less sacred work he is doing. So the less goals he is setting. So his brain isn't setting the goal to get down there and pick up the spoon, then climb back up in the chair, sit back down, use his spoon to eat his food. He had to set no goal, right? He had to do no work. And he builds less resilience. No goal, no work, less resilience. The parent did it all. So that sacred work, doing the chores, taking the garbage out, mowing the lawn, cleaning. If he doesn't want to clean his room or she doesn't want to clean their room once a week, sometimes their room is their sacred space. Doesn't have to be cleaned the way someone else wants, but they can help clean the living room. They can help do the dishes. All of these things should come before devices or anything else, because it is through that sacred work that they gain early advancements in purpose development and resilience development, and they gain resilience by their authority figures, their parents, saying you have to do that work, right? They actually gain resilience because they go, well, I don't want to do that work, and then they have to fight through that, and then they go do the work. And so it's even helpful that the parents insist, even if the child complains, that the parents insist on this sacred work. Even that interaction builds resilience.
Yeah, one other thing, and you touched on, and again, we're going to be spending more time on Sunday. We'll have a whole hour together, and we'll be talking about these things, but from the perspective of moms and dads. One of the things you said early on is we tend to want to, not all of us, but there's this tendency to protect our kids from feeling uncomfortable. And those of us who are adults know life is uncomfortable. And life has, these hurricanes that come our way once in a while. We fall on our faces. And all of these things that you're talking about are to help us weather that. But just touch a bit on this kind of this new thing of not wanting our kids to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. So we all know, I think, where it came, and it came because we wanted to protect kids from sexual abuse. And sexual abuse is very secret. And so we were trying to give kids a language And so that's where I think it started 30 to 40 years ago. And simultaneously, it happened in workplaces. We wanted to give people a language, and at that point, it was especially women, to say, okay, if something is happening that makes you uncomfortable, that's bad, and we need to intervene to rescue you, to save you, right? And so, of course, it's absolutely appropriate language for sexual abuse, for child abuse, because it's a gateway in. The child can say, that made me feel uncomfortable, the way that he touched me or she touched me. Yeah, it's absolutely appropriate there. And it can be appropriate in a workplace. If like if actual sexual harassment is going on, then it's the gateway. You say, that made me feel uncomfortable. You just kept getting your face right next to my face or my breast or whatever. That made me uncomfortable. So that's the correct use of it. But what happened was it then moved into everything. Yeah. So anything that made a child feel uncomfortable became bad. And that's a misuse of it. We want to use it to rescue people in really terrible situations, but discomfort is a very important part of life, and it's a very important part of child development, and it is challenge. And resilience does come from feeling uncomfortable and then choosing your response to that discomfort. And again, not sexual harassment. Just once you take sex out, then you're looking at everything else and saying, well, if I feel uncomfortable, I need to make choices. And as I make choices about how to handle the discomfort I'm feeling, like I don't feel comfortable. I'm playing soccer, but I'm not really good at soccer yet. So I don't feel comfortable. Well, then the choice to make is to kick the ball more, right? To learn how to play soccer better. Right. The choice isn't have someone come in and say, well, you're uncomfortable, we're pulling you out of soccer because you're uncomfortable. No, the discomfort should stimulate the whole system to say, okay, let's help you make the choice that will make you more comfortable. And that is what's missing if we overuse uncomfortable and then try to rescue kids from any discomfort.
This is such interesting stuff. And Michael, you've got a couple books. We'll have some of them available tomorrow at the church. Saving Our Sons, The Minds of Girls, which goes into a lot of this stuff. Oh, yeah. You talk about screen time, you talk about diet, all the things that are necessary to help our boys and girls grow to be good, healthy men and women. Tomorrow, we're going to talk for an hour. We're going to spend an hour looking at, generally speaking, the differences between moms and grandmas tend to parent and grandparent, and dads and grandpas tend to parent and grandparent. And these are tendencies. Right. And we'll talk a little bit about why both are important. We'll talk a bit about, what happens if you don't have a dad in the room or you don't have a mom in the room? How do you work around that? And so just to tease, I'm just going to throw it out. We won't talk about it, so people have to come back tomorrow. But one of the differences is that moms tend to help their kids feel better. Dads tend to help their kids feel stronger. And we'll talk about that and some other differences tomorrow about why that's important. And so that'll be tomorrow, depending on when you're watching. It'll be Sunday, May 1st, 4 to 5 o'clock, free. Any and every parent, grandparent. It's not a religious event, so you can invite your friends to come along as well. And bring your kids, bring your grandkids. We're going to have some PlayStations around. And by PlayStations, I mean not video, but actual PlayStations. And then from 3:30 to 4, if you come a half hour early, free ice cream from the ice cream truck. And we'd love to have you tomorrow. Bring your friends along. Hope to see you. And Michael, looking forward to seeing you Sunday afternoon.
Yes, absolutely. And I look forward to seeing everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.